SNS are one of our key technology partners. So they've kindly invited me along today to give you an overview of Rubrik, a sense of what it can do to help your business. That is the key message that you should be thinking about taking away today. Because if we secure your data, we can secure your business against ransomware attacks, bad actor attacks, both internally and externally. The key message you should hopefully take away as well is about the zero trust. So, first of all, what do these customers have in common? Any ideas? Chris, good one. Any others? They've all publicly in public domain had ransomware attacks. Okay? I searched around, checked all the legal stuff to make sure I wasn't putting anybody's company logo up falsely. So as you can see, ransomware, and I'm sure you appreciate, is on the increase. It is the really top 1, 2 issues that customers face today. Okay? Ransomware, it's not if, it's when you are potentially going to be hit, and how do you subsequently recover. And you know, you also need to think, oh well, I'm in an industry where I'm not going to get attacked, nobody's going to bother with my organisation, I'm too small, I'm not in a critical sector. These are the wide and varied technology groups, customers that have been attacked. You know, some will have recovered with various degrees of success. You know, so it is important to appreciate that we need to build as an organisation some kind of process to help us recover if we are hit by ransomware. Okay, so please do bear that in mind as we go through. So, you know, as Grant actually said, that infrastructure protection is not enough anymore, right? We've all got as perimeter, as networking protection, endpoint, application, all the areas where we focused on historically because bad actors get in, give us a denial of service attack by doing lots of pings on various networking devices. Now, we need to have an additional mechanism beyond all of our infrastructure to protect the data. That is what these bad actors are after. They're not just bothered about preventing our business from not being able to service a web front end, for example. They are concerned with getting hold and getting access to the data because they know that is what is valuable to all organisations. If we corrupt your data, if we, you know, get hold of your data, we have a really good way of exfiltrating money out yourselves. So the area that Rubrik focus on is the data layer. They want to be complementary to all of these. Okay? You can almost think of it as potentially the last line of defence, getting you back up and running if all of these layers have not been protected to your particular customer data. So, it shows a lot of organisations pay the ransom. I was trying to consolidate this slide deck into, you know, a 40-minute presentation because there is quite a bit to get through. And one piece of information I found was 87% of businesses say they would typically pay the ransom if they got hit because they don't feel comfortable that they've got that capability to recover. Right? So if you look at the way ransomware attack would work, you get hit, pop up on your screen, please pay us X amount, 1 million Bitcoins. Right? What do? Well, typically you'll need to work with your IT teams, your security teams, to try and figure out where can we recover. When was our last good backup? Have we got multiple infections in our environment? And it's this that can take a long, long time to actually get you back to a working position. Okay? Could take days, weeks, maybe longer, dependent upon how well secure your backup has been over the years and months, etc. Right? Rubrik want to help you get your business back up and running as quickly and efficiently as possible. So there'll be some key takeaways from today that will help the IT team and the SecOps team work more collaboratively together before you are actually hit with a ransomware attack. That is the thing, you want to prevent it, and then you'll see with the way that the Rubrik technology can do threat hunting, taking the backups and analysing that data offline from the systems. Because once these bad actors are in your environment, they're actually monitoring the systems to see if suddenly you're going, oh, well, I've got that infection now, I'm going to do something about it. And at that point, they can potentially just go, well, I was going to wait a few more weeks, I'm going to hit the button now. The threat analysis and threat hunting you are doing is on the data that is being backed up into Rubrik, so these bad actors have no clue that you are looking around in your environment, trying to understand, have we got any infections that are ticking along, and somebody's just waiting to hit that button to infect your environment. So, these are, next few slides, are what your team should be asking you, but also, if you're an IT director, CFO, they're the kind of questions you should be asking your team. You know, your data managers. You know, do we have any fail-safe capabilities if we are fully compromised? You know, do we have immutable backups? Do we have backups that can't be accessed through a CIF share or an NFS share on our network? That's where, can my backups be discovered by bad actors? Can my backup data be seen? You know, these bad actors, they're very intelligent, right? There's no doubt in it. They're in there for a long period of time, looking at your data backups, looking at your strategies, how you protect your data, what technologies do you have? Do you have like snapshots in your NetApp, for example, which is another layer of defense? They're analysing your environment without you knowing it. Can my backups be modified? You know, if somebody backs up the data, can they then access it and scribble all over it? So these are some of the questions that an IT environment today should be trying to answer, get a tick off, to give you as a business the confidence that your data is resilient and there to be accessed in the unlikely event. And the way that Rubrik challenges it is things like logical air gap. Right? Now, I know your logical air gap can mean different things to different people, but that logical air gap is within your data center and your environment. Right? Because we don't present out NFS shares, SMB shares, like other technology does to backup servers. The backup comes from VMware, for example. Right? So nobody can browse our network, find an NFS share, SMB share. Encryption everywhere. So the data is encrypted on the appliance or up in the cloud if we run our Rubrik in the cloud. We are fully immutable. You know, we're a read-only file system. So once the data management process has taken place, it cannot be changed. We also have something called retention lock. So if there's an acknowledgement that somebody is trying to change our policies to reduce from a 31-day cycle down to a 1-day cycle, we can put a retention lock that prevents that. Okay? We've also got access controls. It is now default, you can't get around it. Every administrator has to have multi-factor authentication into your Rubrik appliance or your Rubrik cloud environment, because they're trying to force you to follow recognised industry best practices. And also, you can see if somebody does delete your data, it goes into a recycle bin. So for a period of time, you've got that little extra grace period to think, oops, something's happened, what can I do? Somebody has been deleting my data. So data observability as was mentioned in the NetApp section, compliancy. Where is my data? Is my data in the right place to comply with, national insurance information, people's personal identification information? Rubrik have the capability to give you that level of information based upon indexing, scanning the backups to understand where that data is held. Is it potentially in the wrong place? Because we're all human. We could place some data that's very confidential, can identify people in an insecure environment, right? What is also happening in today's ransomware environment is, as well as holding you to ransom, they're actually exfiltrating your data. Right? So they might have found a NAS share that you have or an iSCSI volume, and they've extracted data off that. And that might be company confidential, might have personal information. With Rubrik and their data observability technology, you could actually see what data, when you've had that ransomware attack, what potentially they've taken. Because these hackers are continually, while vendors are fighting to get ransomware down to zero, these bad actors are developing their technology as well. They're getting smarter. And as I say, they only need to be right once. You as IT system managers need to be correct all the time. So understanding if you do have an attack, what data has been affected, is going to help you understand, well, we do need to make sure we keep an eye out if this data comes onto the internet, for example. When did malware first appear? How long before a ransomware attack do you think typically people are in your environment? Anybody any ideas? 3 months, 6 months. They are building up a picture of your environment, understanding your environment, understanding where your sensitive data may appear. But we may be backing up that file share, that volume, which has got that malware built into it, right? We need to know that. The technology that Rubrik has scans these backups through threat hunting, backup analysis to help you understand. And that is where then we can engage with our SecOps teams and go, potentially we've got this malware in our environment. We need to devise a plan to stop it going any further. So as we've mentioned, we've got this data observability. And the important message is, this is done on the data that has been backed up into Rubrik. This is not done on your live servers. So any bad actors won't see that you're trying to understand, is there any malware in our environment? It also doesn't put a load on your servers scanning any data. It is done purely at the Rubrik level. So the idea is you can understand, well, suddenly we've got 65 gig of data deleted. We've got 213 gig of data added. Is that a normal policy, or is it an anomaly that is beginning to start to build up in our environment that we need to pinpoint what that issue is and put that plan in place now to stop it going much further? Okay? So all of this is done by machine learning within the Rubrik Security Cloud, which we'll talk about in a moment. So the idea is we have visibility, observability into the data that we have and if it has started to becoming compromised. As we've said, we have this threat hunting analysis based upon this machine learning approach, having that picture of the snapshots, the data protection procedures that have been run into Rubrik. We can analyze that data and start to understand the patterns, what is normal, what is not normal, and start to pinpoint where that is, so you as administrators can take the necessary, processes in your environment to be able to eradicate it and remove it. So we've mentioned sensitive data, compliance. Potentially, a bad actor may exfiltrate data. Rubrik has this capability to analyse the data, placing fingerprints on it, so that then it can analyse what data is in the right location. As it says, it's a single policy engine that scans the ingested backups so that you can understand what data you have based upon the inbuilt rules, and you can also create your own custom rules. So if you have unique data sets, you can build your own custom rules. So this is all about giving you the power to understand, is our data in the right place to be protected correctly based upon access to that volume, user definitions, permissions, all the things that over time you start off with a good intention, but they can creep to be maybe not as secure as they should be, or they should be to the data set that you have. So once we've been protecting our data, the reason we are doing that is to give us the capability to be able to recover our business in the event that we are hit by something unexpected, i.e. a ransomware attack. So the way that works is, how can I surgically recover what I need? Part of the picture that I showed you earlier, where businesses are trying to recover, they're restoring yesterday's backup, the day before, the week before. They're going back an extended period of time. And that is twofold. One, your business isn't potentially operating because you're trying to get to a good position, and it just takes an extended period of time. So you end up in a position of, well, should we pay the ransomware fee and then we can get back up and running quicker? But you've got to think then, as a business, you're contributing to criminals, and are they actually going to honour once you've paid your fee? So the more depth you have in your overall structure, that defence in depth is critical. How can I recover data without bringing back that malware? So we restore Wednesday's backup, for example, but we find that's still got some malware in it. So we keep going in this perpetual cycle of trying to recover. Rubrik will give us pinpoint Wednesday's backup from 2 weeks ago is clean. So you can know instantly, if I recover that, I am going to be recovering a good position efficiently, quickly, to build my business back up to be fully operating without paying those bad actors who are trying to hold you to ransom. How do I automate the recovery? Right? Multiple ways you can do that. API through Rubrik is the key factor. They are API driven for everything. Right? And that integrates with things like Puppet, Chef, ServiceNow, so that you can automate recovery, but they've also their own utilities, we'll see in a couple of slides, that allows you to build this blueprint so that you can say application X needs recovering before application Y. And it will automate that process for you so that it's a nice one-click approach to recover in the event of a ransomware attack, for example. Prioritising which servers come up first. Right? We'll see that in a couple of slides. So, the idea is we have the capability through Rubrik to be back up and running as a business as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So this is where I mentioned that we can actually see, which is our good backup. Quarantine the bad ones. So that quarantined one could be cloned, used by our SEC operators to understand what malware it was, so that we can improve our processes. So the idea with Rubrik is, once we've ingested these backup data, we can use it intelligently as a business to improve our processes, keep moving forward, build pre-built workflows to help us if we do get hit by ransomware. Right? Now, as well as talking and protecting against ransomware, we need the capability to bring back our traditional applications, that might have been hit simply by a data corruption, or somebody's deleted a table within SQL, for example. Human error happens. That's the majority reason why organisations backed up historically, to prevent human error, hardware error on a drive, for example. Okay? So, when Rubrik first came to market a long, long time ago, as we'll see in an up-and-coming slide, they wanted to solve the traditional data management backup challenges, which, as we know, with legacy environments, backing up to tape, it became problematic. You'd hundreds of tapes off-site, you'd huge catalogues on your backup server. So, what Rubrik do to help us recover quickly is they have a feature called Live Mount. So, if you have an on-prem appliance or a cloud environment, what you can actually do is, if somebody rings you up and goes, VMware server X is corrupt, can we do a restore? Of course we can. But what we actually do is, we do it as a live mount, which spins that VM environment up on the Rubrik appliance. So you don't need to do that full restore of multiple terabytes of data, potentially. You are spinning it up on the Rubrik brick itself. So your recovery time could go from hours to minutes, because you're spinning it up on the appliance itself. So it's all about recovery time objective with Live Mount. We can get multiple business services back up and running very, very quickly. And that works with, as you'd imagine, standard VMware environments, but also with SQL and Oracle, which are the databases that are really driving your businesses forward with business applications. We also do something called Cloud Out. Okay? So what Cloud Out allows us to do is back up the data, protect it into our Rubrik environment, and then we can, for long-term storage, send that data up into the cloud. Now, the thing is, yes, we're sending it up to the cloud, but as a business, are we doing anything useful with that data that is then just up in the cloud? Well, potentially the answer might be no. The Rubrik answer to that is something called Cloud On. So we've got this data in the cloud. What we can do with the Cloud On feature is actually instantiate, spin up virtual machines in the cloud using the data that is up in the cloud. So the benefit of that is, we can build a nice test dev environment. We can use it for server migration workloads up into the cloud. We can use it for DR. So we could actually spin up machines ahead of a potential DR situation. And one of the use cases that Rubrik have spoke to me about in the past is an organisation based in Miami. Right? So as we know, Miami prone to tornadoes, or hurricanes, sorry, right? What they do, because of the API-driven nature of Rubrik, they ingest weather reports, and if they see any anomalies that a hurricane may be coming, they actually automate spinning up of machines in the cloud ahead of, do we need to trigger a DR because suddenly the tornado or hurricane was much stronger than we envisaged, and his data centers flooded. Right? So this is the API nature of Rubrik and the benefit that it can actually bring to you. Now, we've been talking about bad actors, and I mentioned earlier logical air gap. Right? I'm sure if I did a straw poll in this room, everybody would have a subtly different opinion of what air gap means. Right? But what this means from a Rubrik perspective is the data gets ingested into our core Rubrik environment. Right? That is then uploaded to Rubrik's cloud environment. And that is managed by Rubrik and Rubrik only. So the benefit there is, if somebody did infiltrate our environment and got my password to the Rubrik appliance, and they could then start to do, horrible things to the backups we have. If we have got our data in Rubrik Cloud Vault, they can't get anywhere near that. The only people who manage the Rubrik Cloud Vault is Rubrik themselves. So that is a true air gap. Because I'm sure enough people will probably come up with the answer, well, air gapping is I back up to a tape and then I take that tape off site and there's a complete isolation. Rubrik provide that capability through Rubrik Cloud Vault. And we are starting to see more and more customers use this in anger. Right? It came as part of Rubrik's evolution about 2 years ago now. And more customers are seeing and appreciating the benefit that it brings to them by having that true air gap copy that nobody locally can interact with. So earlier we talked about, if we have a DR, how can we recover quickly? Well, they have a feature called Orchestrated Application Recovery. Right? And what you do is you build your blueprints. So you get the relevant teams together for database X, application Y, and you build this plan. And you can see here it talks about boot order. So you'll have your restore order, which sequence comes first. And the idea is that then that will allow very efficient, very quick rebuilding of your infrastructure to get you back up and running. As it says, restore in minutes or hours, not days or weeks. Okay? So this is what Rubrik are all about, giving you efficient capabilities to be able to recover your business services and the associated business data as quickly as possible. Right? Integrates with SOAR, so storage, orchestration and recovery applications that should be part of your defense in depth strategy. So there's multiple ways that Rubrik will integrate with your infrastructure to be able to recover your data as quickly as possible. So again, once we've done this threat hunting, we can then actually contain the bad files, the encrypted files that have crept into our environment. Right? And all of this is available to you through, as we'll see, what's called Rubrik Security Cloud. Okay? So the idea is, yes, we've got all this backup data, let's do something intelligent with it. Let's understand why we might be, beholden to a ransomware attack. Let's figure that out. So all of this is part of what we'll see, Rubrik Security Cloud. But again, the important thing is it's not being done on the server environment where those bad actors have infiltrated and are looking around to understand what you may be doing to try and stop them, prevent them. They want money out of you. Rubrik want to give you the tools, the technology to not have to pay that ransom and get your business back up and running very quickly. And if you do have a look at Rubrik's website, there's a really good use case from a company called Langs Builders. Right? Nobody will have probably ever heard of them. They're actually an Australian company who do building supplies. Right? They got hit by a ransomware attack. Right? This is publicly available. This is them giving their, feedback to Rubrik that they were able to recover their business within 24 hours after being hit by a ransomware attack. And that is where Rubrik want to play. Rubrik don't position themselves as a backup company anymore. They position themselves as a data cyber security company. I'll also mention some of the features that are coming out in the winter release, which is the next evolution of their software to help you understand, how you could recover from a cyber attack even quicker. Okay? So how many people have M365? Yeah, quite a few, right? Obviously, Microsoft themselves recommend that data needs to be protected, right? And we'll see why Rubrik is the partner of choice for that in the next few slides, right? M365 is starting to become a target for, ransomware as well. We can't assume that because it's in the cloud, it's super secure, it's unreachable. Well, unfortunately, it's not, right? So, can our data be compromised in M365? Can bad actors get to my data? Can I recover to any level of granularity? Definitely so, with the Rubrik M365 protection, as we'll see. Can I manage scale of protection as my environment grows? Can the admins be compromised? People get people's passwords, start logging in, but multi-factor authentication helps that. And M365 is backed up through what's called Rubrik Security Cloud, which we're going to touch on in a second or so. So, about 18 months ago, Rubrik and Microsoft started to work much closer together, to the point of view that Microsoft invested money, cash, into Rubrik, because they appreciated the value of what Rubrik could bring to data protection requirements. Right? The benefit of that relationship and that forging of ties is that Rubrik can now integrate with Microsoft Sentinel. Rubrik now have a place on Microsoft's security infrastructure, because they have a team of people who are constantly trying to understand the market for ransomware attacks, what ransomware attacks are coming along, etc. But they also opened up special APIs to Rubrik. So that makes the recovery of your M365 environment much more efficient. Because all these vendors have APIs that they publish. But there's always, I've found from working with many different vendors over many years, other APIs that they don't publish. They'll work with their trusted companies and give them that. And that's what's happened as part of this relationship, that Rubrik and Microsoft work closer together, so your protection of M365, SharePoint, OneDrive, your mail, is much more efficient, but more importantly, the restore can be done en masse. Right? And that is forever moving forward. Rubrik have made some announcements in their winter release that they're going to give you more visibility into certain things in your M365. Now, there's two ways you can protect M365 through Rubrik. You can either back it up into your own tenant, but then if that tenant becomes, ransomware, you might lose access to your data to recover it. You could host your M365 backed up data in Rubrik's tenant. So as it says, it's air-gapped. It's managed by Rubrik themselves. So the idea is you want to always be trying to think, what is the safest way to protect the data within our environment, but more importantly, what is the best way to be able to get that restore with a minimal recovery point objective? And that's what, from a backup vendor, you should always be looking. Yeah, I might be able to back up in an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, but if your recovery time's 8 hours, that defeats the object. You design it for recovery first, because that is when you need that technology at its best to be able to get you back up and running. So as I've mentioned, Rubrik have been on a journey. They started as a company in 2014 with the premise and idea of solving legacy data protection issues, backing up to tape, having multiple legacy products that weren't well protected. So they brought these things to market. A very simple SLA-driven approach to data backups. Everything within Rubrik, your M365, your SQL, your Oracle, your VMware, is all protected through very, very simple to configure SLAs. There's no thinking about, well, I've got to create a schedule and map that to that server, give that to another server. You literally create SLAs and assign them to your environment. It is very, very simple. And you can build multiple SLAs to meet your business needs. Rubrik then acknowledged cloud were going to become more prevalent. People using hybrid clouds, going fully cloud. So they wanted to make sure you could utilize that cloud environment, A, to protect your data, but B, also to protect your data that you were hosting in the cloud. And that is where you could run a Rubrik appliance in-prem on your data center. You could have an equivalent one in the cloud. So the idea is you can protect your data through Rubrik wherever it lives. That's why their core, we'll call it firmware using old-fashioned speak, is CDM, Cloud Data Manager. That is their intelligent capability to manage data, no matter where it is distributed within your infrastructure. And as we've said, they are driving forward, that data security message through sensitive data discovery and monitoring, threat hunting, ransomware monitoring investigation. The idea is they want to empower you, give you the right tools so that you can fight back against those bad actors and spot it before it becomes an issue and remedy it. And this is where Rubrik Security Cloud come in. I understand there might be some Rubrik customers in the room. This used to be the Polaris environment. This has now transitioned to what's called Rubrik Security Cloud. So this is their overarching technology environment that they are now splitting down into 3 pillars, as we've seen: data resilience, data observability, and data remediation. Right? So Rubrik are always driving forward the security message. And this is why the message now out of Rubrik, the strategy is, we are a cyber security for data. They're not going to replace anything in those perimeter edge network. They want to be your gold partner for recovery of your business services and your data in the event that you get hit by a ransomware attack, for example. So they see now that ransomware attacks are going to become more prevalent. They need to give you the tools to be able to fight back against that. So they really do see their technology as the next frontier in cybersecurity for data. That is the key message I want to get across. They're not going to replace any cyber, technology and tools you have in your infrastructure at the moment, whether that's software in a vendor's hardware, like we saw with NetApp. They just want to be complementary to all of that, but they are going to end up potentially being your last point of call, simply because they've penetrated all those different layers, and you now need to start to recover that data in anger, get back up and running as quickly and as simply as possible, and as less stressful. So, as part of Rubrik Security Cloud, they've also introduced something called Data Security Command Center. So what that is doing is that's giving you a score of your environment of data within the Rubrik, whether you've configured admins following best practice for Rubrik, like have you turned on MFA, etc. Right? And it's giving you a score so that you can actually see, well, where are we overall? And in the winter release, you are now able to build this up as a history. So if we ran that today and it gave us a score of 50, right, it gives you the actions that you need to implement to get that score higher and higher. Because obviously the reach is, that wants to be 100%. But that would just be a one-off. You can now, with the new winter release that's coming up later this year, it builds that history for you. So you could see last week I was at 75. I've made the changes as recommended by the data center security environment, and I'm now at 80. Right, I'm going in the right direction. I'm not going backwards. Right? And this is why Rubrik are constantly pushing where they want their technology to get to around giving you that cyber security and recoverability if you were to be hit by a ransomware attack. So, I just want to give you a profile of some of the customers. We've got quite a good mix today. Rubrik do have solutions in many, many different organizations. And that customer base is constantly growing, as people see the value, the capabilities to be able to recover in a ransomware attack through what Rubrik provide and offer. Right? Because that is what they position themselves as. And as you can see, many of them are household names. They're not niche customers. There's many different education, security companies, government, technology, retail. The customer base is very wide and varied. And the benefit of that is Rubrik then get the feedback from them so that they can start to develop their technology as well. Rubrik like to engage with you as customers so that they get your feedback. You can then say, well, have we thought of doing this? Have we thought of doing that? Let's drive forward what that technology and capability can provide for us. So it is very wide and varied. So one of the biggest things I find with customers today is, yes, we've got that technology, but if we do have issues, how well does that vendor interact with us? I'm sure we've all had in the past worked with vendors where when you ring them up, the first thing they say is, can you update your firmware? Can you do this? Can you do that? And you end up going through that scripted process to try and resolve an issue. With Rubrik, I've had to use their support capabilities for our demonstration unit. And when you go through support, you actually get to a support person straight off. You don't get to that first level script of, can you do this? Can you do that? Give us a ring when you've updated your firmware. You are through to a support person who can take your case on very swiftly and very efficiently. Okay? Because the reason I've had to work with them recently is we have demonstration proof of concept units. And we have to wipe those once they've been through that proof of concept. If you do that now, previously I could ring up Rubrik, ask them to turn a feature on, and then I could run a command to do a reset, which is turned off once the array is fully initialized and in operation. Okay? They've even taken that process now to be two-factor authentication in their business. So no longer can I just log a support call and go, can you wipe this, or give me the command to wipe this array. The support person has to get internal approval as well from their next level of management. So that they are making sure no internal bad actors has the capability to destroy data that is backed up into Rubrik and protected by Rubrik. So as you can see, they are getting good customer ratings from a support perspective. They're also getting well acknowledged within the industry. So the Gartners, the Forresters, the Forbes, are constantly looking at what Rubrik are doing to their technology to provide customers like yourselves with the best in breed recovery capabilities, best in ransomware recoveries, and they are frequently named in the higher quadrants, the Cloud 100 for technology that provides data protection as the years go on. So it is a well-established technology that is constantly being driven by Rubrik to provide you the right tools to recover from ransomware. So I don't know how clear this is coming across, but Rubrik are up here, in the leaders quadrant. And obviously other vendors are in there as well, but whenever you're looking at a vendor now, when I'm starting to look at vendors now, my main concern is what is the cybersecurity capabilities of that technology? What ransomware recovery capabilities do they provide to me? Can they look at my incidents of compromise? Can they do threat hunting? Can they acknowledge ahead of time, potentially, that we have got ransomware within our infrastructure? And this is a very unique feature. I've looked around and tried to find other vendors. Rubrik have a dedicated ransomware recovery team. So if you are a Rubrik customer with a support contract and you do get hit with a ransomware attack, you can log a P1 support call telling them you're being hit by a ransomware attack, and then a special team is brought together to work with you till you tell them to go away. Right? And it is made up of experienced support engineers. It's made up of senior management. You know, so it's not words. There is a special team that will be brought together to help you till you tell them to go away. We have resolved our cybersecurity challenges. Right? So that is available to you if you have a support contract. Now, I've not seen any other vendor offer that in the industry at the moment. Okay? Please correct me if I'm wrong. If anybody has any other data protection technologies and they've otherwise, you know, please tell me after we've had a coffee. But it is there for you. One of the other unique features that I've found with Rubrik is they, for want of a better phrase, put the money where the mouth is. They offer a ransomware recovery warranty, which is up to $5 million. Right? So if you did get hit by a Rubikware attack and you've Rubrik, they will potentially, if they can't get your business back up and running, offer you that warranty. Now, obviously, I've put it, you know, down here, terms and conditions apply. It's got to be installed to best practice. You know, you have to have a Rubrik customer success manager who looks at your environment every month to make sure you're following good practice in line with that, right? So those last two slides are the key takeaways for me. Ransomware recovery team to help me out when I need it the most, and if it does happen, there's that warranty, so Rubrik would stand behind it. So last couple of slides, zero trust data security. I'm sure you have that across your infrastructure, but Rubrik want that around your data as well. That is the area here, resilience, observability, and remediation, that they want to provide to your infrastructure to help you out. So it's time for a new approach, which is what it is. Right? So is my backup cyber secure? Can we monitor risk? How quickly can we recover? So thank you very much for your attention. If there's any questions that we think about, you know, I'm going to be around for the rest of the day. So please come and say hello and I'll happily answer any questions that you might have.